I'm thinking of the execution of Todd Browning, the plumber, in East Ridge by Officer Stevenson, a city employee of that municipal corporation. How is it that city employees can execute citizens who pay the taxes? The story is at Nooganomics.com. It came out in the very end of last year. The killing was in August, and I finally got around to writing about that amazing expression of state power when we were covering here at Nooga Radio the killing by a state contractor employee, the bus driver who ran off the road with a school bus full of children and killing 6. And I wrote there how callous the whole operation of the state, the modern state, is, and it is sad to think that the enemy of prosperity is not competition. It's not lack of knowledge. The problem that we have in many areas of life is the state itself, and we deserve that. We deserve that problem because we have been, as people, as Americans, we have been, you might say, worshipers of power since the time of Lincoln, when he thought that the country could be reunified by bloodshed. And that theory of bloodshed has operated in the American psyche and American polity since that time, and even before. The name is David Tulis, and I'm glad you're giving me just a minute of your time. The execution by Daniel Stevenson was with a military rifle at the side of the street in East Ridge, and the officer wasn't going to give his ground. Right? He does what every officer does. He is a man. And so he's going to lay down a line, and if you cross that line, well, you're dead. Okay, you simply are dead. And the YouTube video, which you can see on Nooganomics.com, is just heartrending. It is. I would suggest you should not watch it with children nearby to hear the sounds and to hear and to see what happens. It's a very short clip, a couple minutes long. And what's remarkable is that the ejecting brass from the rifle clatters against the windshield of the cruiser in which the camera is mounted. And the man who's slain in cold blood there on the side of the street is shot 5 times. And the officer fires the 5th round at him as the man is turning against him, falling down. These are .223 caliber bullets. They're not like 30 cals, which would really throw you back. They're penetrating and wounding rounds. And so what they do is they go in and they tear up your body and wound you. They're wounding rounds, and the theory of the wounding round at the time of the Vietnam War was that you create more casualties among the enemy, creating upon his system more of a drain. Right, you have more wounded people, less killed people, and so you're putting a drain on their resources, and that's why that round is so small. It has some range limitations, but for policing and killing citizens up close, it's a very, very fine weapon for that. The victim's hands are at his side, but he's done the wrong thing. And the whole story of the McPherson execution, or I'm sorry, the Stevenson execution of Todd Browning, is a picture where reform is seen. You can see the need for reform in the custom of police practice in that execution. Again, this is a summary execution. It is statutorily permitted, and it's extrajudicial. We think of gangs in Colombia. We think of gangs in Nicaragua who are involved in extrajudicial killings. Well, that's just a word of state killings outside of law, right? Outside of protocol, outside in our country of due process. We have due process here, and if you were to lose your life at the hands of the state, there has to be a finding of fact that you violated a capital law, and that your life is forfeit because you did that act. 800-8949. That's 800-8949, the David Tulis program. And I am David Tulis. I do thank you. Speaking here, my lips flapping, my jaw going up and down over a sacred area, that being the hallowed necktie, the hallowed bow tie of David Tulis. And it is sitting quietly here just under my Adam's apple, glowing quietly for the camera on Facebook. We are at Nooga Radio on Facebook, and also for a second lens for YouTube. We're live on YouTube. Also, Noogaradio.com online. You can hear hear us, that site is so simple. All it does is just give us the live audio of the Sean Hannity show, right? Every afternoon. Colin Cowherd, we've got Alex Jones in the evening and George Noory at Coast to Coast AM overnight. And great programmings. We've got Russell and news early in the morning at America's First News, and many other terrific shows and hosts, including Jill Collins, the artist, to date. Now, these executions call for reform, and the reforms that need to be discussed, but which are not being discussed, are in four areas. The number is 800-8949, 800-8949. And they are in the use of space, time, cover, and de-escalation. Todd Browning perished in August last year because he violated the rules, right? The rules of custom laid down by the officer. And the officer was by himself, and he should have taken cover. He should have said, there's a man who's angry. He had a display of anger at an auto parts store, threatening death, threatening even to kill himself. And here he was in a rage. This man was in a rage, clearly ungodly, right? He was acting outside of God's warrant for anger. He was being angry and not being holy while being angry. You know, he was sinning while being angry. So we're told to be angry and sin not. And that's a command because God knows how hard it is for us to be angry and not sin. So we're told be angry, but sin not. And clearly Todd Browning was violating God's rules here, but did he deserve death? Well, Officer Stevenson thought so. He would not call for backup. He did not retreat. And he laid a line down. He said, if you touch the tarmac, you're dead. Okay. Don't make me kill you. Don't make me kill you. So that was it. The whole theory. You're facing death right now. Don't make me kill you. And so, Todd Browning, acting outside of reason, right? Acting outside of common self-preservation and that sense of self-preservation that God gives every human being, crossed that line. And so he fell dead in the right of way, hit 5 times at point blank range, the brass ejecting powerfully and clattering against the windscreen of the cruiser. Now, reform would say, no, this is clearly a situation that has to be de-escalated, not brought to a head, right? The cop wants to bring it to a head because he's manly and he's got to go back on patrol, right? So, okay, well, I better kill this guy so I can get back on my patrol routine, and I've got to make some traffic arrests today to meet the quota. That's the kind of thing that officers face, and they're trained to be efficient, right? So efficiency requires death sometimes, and unfortunately, these deaths often occur among put upon people who are not quite in their right minds. They're angry, they're on drugs, they're off drugs that they need to be on under prescription, or they have some kind of crisis. Reform cries for the end of this kind of encounter. And also, I would say the Javero Eagle killing that is highlighted at the Concerned Citizens for Justice website, that also is a picture of the problem. And we have 3 candidates for police chief, and the calls for reform are at best muted in Chattanooga. The calls for reform from the NAACP and even from this particular group, although Concerned Citizens for Justice has some right ideas and some very strong language, their emphasis is on the racism rather than on 2 other points. I would say that would be that every citizen is made in God's image, A, and then B, the officer cannot act without probable cause. And we have a great deal of abuse against the citizenry by police departments, and maybe, I'd say less so, but maybe by the sheriff's department as well. Though I think what we want to have in the way of reform is the sublimation of police departments into the sheriff's department. What we want to have is, if we can get the legal arrangements made, is to have police departments abolished and the sheriff's department run by Jim Hammond, and then when he retires from office, his successor, to provide the service of policing and peacekeeping. Now, that's the service. Now, most of policing, though, is, well, I'm not sure if I can say most, but let's say a great portion of policing is not help rendering aid and care. Much of it is law enforcement, and that is where we see the problem. That is where the David Roddy militarization comes into play. And all right, your question is, which is the best candidate? Well, okay, if you really want to know, I would say of the 3, probably Edwin McPherson. And that is because of his color. No, I'm not being racist here to say that. I'm saying because he, being a black man, knows about the oppression by policing of his race. That oppression is not racist in its basis. Okay, it is different. It's actually bigger than the claims that racism makes. The claims of racism made by Concerned Citizens for Justice are smaller than the issue as I see it. The issue is the necessity for police to operate as providing peacekeeping services and not as enforcing laws. Law enforcement is the interest of the state. Peacekeeping is the interest of the people. Most people who are conservatives want safety from the police. They want law enforcement. Hardly a single Christian person that you could meet would say that law enforcement is a problem. No, they would say law enforcement is good. And yet, who falls the most heavily, the most dreadedly under law enforcement? Well, it's poor people. It's poor people and common people, and often those are black. And it's not because they're black that they're put under the gun. It's because they're poor, and because they're ignorant. They don't know their rights. Now, I say that because it's a great problem. I barely know my rights. I barely know how to defend them, and I'm learning how to do it. I'm learning. I'm reading. I'm thinking. I'm studying a little bit of law to try to understand how to assert my rights and to defend them. That is something that's very difficult to do, and we know that this is a problem because when we see the video at the Times Free Press website of the stop by Officer Tiffany Lentz of two people, we can see these two people don't have a defense. They don't know how to defend their rights. One of them is Demetrius Coonrod, and the other is Anthony Gladden. Now, Anthony Gladden, in the initial reports, is said not to have had a driver's license. But I called him and reached him, and he called me back yesterday, and I've not had a real interview with him. But in a nutshell, he did say, well, he does have a license from another state, but because he hadn't paid a fine, that license is not recognized or not allowed to be offered in that state. So since states have compacts among themselves to honor state damages against a person's license, Tennessee no doubt would honor the claims against an active license by another state against its licensee, that being here Anthony Gladden, who works in a hospital. A very busy man, hard to get a hold of, and I think he's pressed for time. He must be working double shifts or having a great number of demands on his time. But he did say he was a licensee. Now that brings up the question that we cover at Nooganomics.com. We are brought to you, by the way, by Nooganomics.com, and there you'll find the latest report, which I put out a couple days ago on that arrest. It is an analysis, a kind of legal analysis of the arrest. And it asked the question about commercial government. Now, commercial government is the world in which we live today. It is called commercial government, and it operates by in practice, obliterating constitutional liberty. And that's what the state does ordinarily. It is states are against constitutional rights. People who write statutes are against constitutional rights. And so they've written a statute it's not unconstitutional, but it's extra constitutional, and what it does is convert basically all travel into commercial activity, and that's how jurisdiction is obtained over individuals who are not, in fact, in commerce. And that there's a whole separate discussion that we've had perhaps before that I can just mention, and that is the state for 80 years now has enculturated the people, the state, and its claims and its policies and polices, right? Policy comes from police. That's why I don't like policies, because policies imply policing of some activity which is innocent and harmless, but now is subject to the police. I don't like policies, and I don't really talk about policies unless I have to. I'd rather talk about law and the operation of law against the people, because ordinarily these laws operate in favor of one group to the disfavor of another. And the largest group of disfavored, especially under monetary policy, right, bank issue, the Federal Reserve System, the biggest victims are common people and the poor. The 90% of the economy, 90% of the people earn 15 or 20% of the national wealth every year, the new wealth, and everybody else earns the rest. That's that is a system that I think the left rightly criticizes, and so do I with my free market and classical liberal analysis. That's David Tulis's analysis. So getting back, we have this commercial realm, and if you read Nooganomics.com, you've probably gotten already a sense of this this dynamic. It is extraordinarily important, and that's why you, my listener, should subscribe to Nooganomics.com, the website for the man who matters, edited by me, one of the main writers there. Now we have these three candidates for Chief of Police: Todd Chamberlain from LAPD, Edwin McPherson, local, and David Roddy. David Roddy is white and McPherson is black. I don't know details, but I'm looking just at overall dispositions. Roddy, the military man, I published a photograph of him holding an M60 machine gun, as if to say, oh man, if I could just use this somehow, if I could just find some occasion to use. That's kind of the expression that he has on his face in a photo shoot that was posted at the Facebook page of that department. The other man, McPherson, probably is more humane and probably has in his heart the sympathy for his own people. And those are the people who are ground up in the Hamilton County and city business of incarceration and adjudication and administration. You might say the judicial industrial complex of the state that has its satellites here in Hamilton County. And that system is one that we write about a great deal, and we explore here at Nooga Radio live on Facebook. By the way, we're on TuneIn Radio. TuneIn Radio is an app. You get that on your phone, and you can hear me live anytime. Just have that app on your phone and tap it whenever you have a minute. Maybe I'm on. Maybe I've got Sean Hannity on. Maybe Russell's giving the local news. Maybe Joe Collins is giving an art analysis. When you touch that icon, just do that and have Nooga Radio there. AM 1240 and FM 92.7 on the real airwaves. Now, I wanted to tell you just briefly about what the left wing, the progressive, the poofter-oriented, atheist-oriented humanists at Concerned Citizens for Justice have in view, and they're right. They have done some very good work, and I think they have some fine ideas here. Now, there's a limit to where I think the value of this would go, but in their press release, in which they have at the bottom a link out to a PDF that's called "A Vision for Black Lives: Policy Demands for Black Power, Freedom, and Justice." Now, there's some usual sort of Black Panther kind of language in some of this material, but the grievances that these people have against policing per se, against the police operation through law enforcement, as it's called, against the black man, these are of value. Okay, these are points of value. And though you, my listener, may be a conservative, you may be a libertarian, you may be a good political leftist, there are some things here that I think we would all agree on. But one point that this organization proposes is community control through the establishment of, and here's the language, a real and effective civilian oversight board with subpoena, investigatory, and disciplinary power, and significant representation, it says, from the communities who experience the most policing, right? So if you're in a community that experiences a lot of policing, then people from your neighborhood, this proposal says, should be on this board. And through community control of the city budget by participatory budgeting, I'm not sure what that is, and divestment from the huge police budget in favor of investment in solutions that address the root causes of crime and violence. Now there we have a reference to the work of the gospel, but these are atheists and humanists largely, and so they're not going to give credit to the work of God and to God's people through the church. But this is a discussion effectively of the diaconate, the Christian diaconate, where the poor are cared for, orphans receive moral training, ethical training, care, they receive meals, they get love, they have places to stay. That is what I think is implied there, but not mentioned, because these people would not propose any kind of Christian reconstruction. Because the community pressure to address the root causes, candidate after candidate in the last city election, stated we can't police our way out of these issues. That's a good point. And yet city officials continue making the most significant investments in policing and surveillance. The bottom line is that we need community control. And we need to ask the Chattanooga City Council work with us to establish it now while a transition in leadership of the department presents itself. We further ask them to seriously consider the implementation of a participatory budgeting, and we'll be presenting them with information and case studies from other cities at the July 25 meeting. Now, this, I'd say that's a very wholesome analysis. Here we have progressives. So notice God is gracious in many ways. He gives even leftists, even progressives, remarkable insights. And I think this is something in the right direction. However, I would say perhaps best would be that every officer be required to buy a $2 or $5 million bond for his personal actions outside of lawful authority. And there are some other changes too. David Tulis.
The Tennessee Valley's news, talk, and sports.